For more than 45 years, Habilitative Systems Incorporated, a nationally recognized human services organization located on Chicago's West Side, has delivered diversified social programs to underserved populations with an array of health and human service needs, with a special focus on children and youth.
My name is Donald Dew, and I'm President and CEO of Habilitative Systems, Inc. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome to the Habilitative Systems, Inc. Human Services Campus our Governor Pritzker, of course our Congressman Danny K. Davis, Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford, Representative LaShawn Ford, Representative Ammons, and of course I cannot forget Lieutenant Governor Stratton. HSI has been serving the Chicagoland communities for over 45 years. And I'm just so pleased that we've been able to serve both the west and south sides of Chicago. But I'm very, very pleased that we've been able to have this legacy of service for our children with special needs. And yes, Mr. Governor, we've been providing 0 to 3 early intervention services, special education services, daycare services, restorative justice services, you name it, we've been doing it for the children. In fact, at one point in time, HSI was the largest black managed child welfare in the state of Illinois and spearheaded the formation of the African American Family Commission, which of course dealt with the disproportionate representation of African American children in the child welfare system. So yes, it is my honor to host this illustrious group of folks today for this special bill signing.
That bill is HB 342, or the Whole Child Bill.
I am Robin Staines, President of Advance Illinois. We're a bipartisan policy and advocacy organization, and I am unbelievably excited to be here today because this is an historic bill signing. And what we're doing today is making this systemic, a priority for all students to get that care that they need. And I want to give a shout out to the people in the organizations that got us here. First and foremost is the Legislative Black Caucus. They have championed this work. And they did. And I want to specifically shout out the leadership of Leader Kimberly Lightford and Representative Carol Ammons. They've been amazing. Rep. Ford, you're right in there. I want to acknowledge that we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the State Board of Education. They pulled it off, got us good actionable recommendations. Lastly, it would be wrong not to acknowledge Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton. You guys, this work nests with a whole bunch of other works. This bill does 4 things that if you're serious about making this a system, not ad hoc, not leaving it to chance, it does 4 critical things. 1, we've never had a collective, coherent understanding. What do we mean by trauma? What do we mean by trauma-informed, healing-centered care? We do now. 2, we don't know what the level need is at communities across the state. We know it's everywhere. And if we didn't know that before COVID, we sure know that now. 3, you've got to understand what resources you're already deploying. And while we gather information on how many counselors, social workers, psychologists, nurses are at schools, we don't publish it anywhere. And if you don't understand what that is, then you as parents can't make decisions. Where do I want to go? You as teachers can't make that decision. And you can't make decisions at the local or the state level. We've taken care of that. That information is now going to be in the state report card. And finally, we're putting in place a training protocol before you hit schools and classrooms and carrying on once you're there. That's a system. That's why this is historic. That's why we're in a great spot. And with that, I want to turn it over to Governor Pritzker, who helped lead the charge.
In 2021, I was proud to support Leader Lightford in establishing the Whole Child Task Force, bringing together child psychologists and teachers and administrators, state agencies, to provide evidence-based recommendations on how to improve learning environments so every student from every background can thrive. Well, here we are 2 years later. We're codifying many of that task force's recommendations into law. This means permanence for those recommendations. We're signing HB 342 and making sure that we're having the Illinois State Board of Education develop a Children's Adversity Index that will measure community childhood trauma exposure for children ages 3 to 19. And we're requiring teacher training workshops focused on trauma-responsive learning environments and trauma-informed best practices, and so much more in this bill. It also amends ISB's, the Illinois State Board of Education's school report card, to include the total number of school counselors in a school, social workers, school nurses, school psychologists in every school, with student ratios for each worker so that we can keep track of mental and emotional support for Illinois students up and down our state. So here's to an Illinois where all students are heard and seen and supported to grow into the bright young leaders of tomorrow. And with that, it is my great pleasure to turn it over to a former Sunday school teacher, and a champion for Illinois children, our great Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton.
I just want to thank you all for putting our children and their needs first. I also want to thank Donald Dew and the entire team at Habilitative Systems, Inc. Thank you for hosting us today and for your team's work in standing in the gap and providing care and services to vulnerable communities. And I just have to say, coming into this room, I'm so glad to see so many young people, because this is why we are here. Can we give them a round of applause? The reality is, a student's experiences and challenges don't begin and end in the classroom. Everything they see and feel at home and in their communities, that doesn't disappear when the bell rings. Data shows that when children are abused or neglected, when they go hungry or are homeless, are exposed to violence and crime in their neighborhoods, exposed to domestic violence, they are in a constant state of trauma. And that constant trauma turns to toxic stress and changes a child's life forever. So when we support the whole child, when we implement the frameworks in our schools and education system to see the signs and respond holistically and with care as outlined in the recommendations of House Bill 342, then we build the groundwork to uplift a well-educated, well-adjusted, diverse next generation. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce one of the chief bill sponsors, a dedicated legislator long known for taking action to pave a way to a brighter tomorrow for every Illinoisan, but especially our children and young people, Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford.
So I'd like to bring greetings to all of you on behalf of the 4th Senate District, which we are assembled on the west side in the 4th Senate District. Donald, thank you for answering my call to host us on today. I'm so grateful. When I thought of where could the governor sign such a monumental piece, I thought of the work in the mental health supports that HSI, the board, and all the team here has done in this space for decades. So it's an honor for me to bring this to HSI in the west side of Chicago. Because what I know in my leadership capacity is that you can be on an initiative and it doesn't happen that year, and then you bring that initiative up again the next year and it doesn't happen that year, and then you can keep trying and trying and trying, and after 12 years of trying, you get to a place where you get real offended. And you say, okay, we have an excellent governor. He understands our strife. He's very supportive. We have an excellent lieutenant governor. The time is now. And that's actually how it all came to be. So I want to thank the governor, the lieutenant governor, and all of the advocacy groups for their support. So the bill being signed today, House Bill 342, it reflects our unwavering commitment to nourishing every aspect of a child's development, ensuring they have the tools and support they need to thrive in a rapidly changing world. We must recognize that education is not merely about taking a test, the test scores and academic achievements. It's about fostering a well-rounded individual who possess not only intellectual expertise, but also emotional intelligence, creativity, empathy, and resilience. The Whole Child Task Force was an initiative of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus 4-pillar agenda to rid Illinois of systemic racism in 2021. But I recognize that you have to follow through. Even once it becomes a law, does not mean it'll be properly implemented. So I aim to revolutionize our educational system by placing every student at the heart of everything we do. Under the law, the Illinois State Board of Education will create a Children's Adversity Index, which will measure community childhood trauma exposure. We need to measure the exposure across the population of children from ages 3 to 18 by May 31st of 2025. By focusing on the whole child, we are empowering them to reach their full potential, contributing positively to society and leading fulfilling lives. Additionally, we are committed to fostering a safe and inclusive environment for all students, regardless of their background, identity, or their abilities. Together, we are creating a vision for a brighter future for every child in Illinois. And I could not have done this alone without my partner in crime from the Illinois House. She's the current Joint Caucus Chair. She is our current caucus chair. She's doing a wonderful job, ringing all the way from Champaign-Urbana, Representative Carol Ammons.
When we all experienced the trauma as a nation of the killing of George Floyd, that there was something terribly wrong, and that our response as legislators needed to be comprehensive and across the board. Leader Lightfoot came to the caucus and said, we need to do something different. We need to implement some pillars that are across the board that deals with not just criminal justice reform, because that was right in our face. But the other things we didn't see was the responses that the children had from the trauma that they saw on television, social media, in their neighborhoods, right next to them and their friends. This response from the Black Caucus started with House Bill 2170. And that bill laid out the framework that went from early childhood to workforce development. And our governor, yes, is in at the right time for us to do the right thing, because our schools have been functioning on a 1954 model that hadn't caught up with the current needs of the children and the families. That's what this is about for us. And so to my colleague, Representative Ford, whom we love him, to Leader Lightfoot, to the entirety of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, who understands our role in this moment. We thank you all for your belief in us.
So I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all of you for being here and recognizing that mental health does impact all of us. And as we've heard today, it's not equitable, the issues and the stressors that happen in our state. But that doesn't matter, because what we learned in the pandemic is that kids were hurting. 20 years ago, we created the Illinois Children's Mental Health Partnership and the first ever social emotional learning standards. And 20 years later, we are trying to make those stronger and better, because the system hasn't had the attention that it needs to change. And what I see and hear today is that we're trying to finally not just fix this with philanthropy or a grant or one federal program or another federal program that shows up and then goes away. We're actually creating systemic investments in how we're going to do this for every kid. And to me, that's amazing.
Why was it important to sign this piece of legislation here at HSI, which is going to undergo a renovation to adequately deal with those individuals who have disabilities in terms of the infrastructure here?
Well, I appreciate your recognizing that funding, but most importantly, this organization does the kind of work that we need for our children. And you see it in the ambassadors to my left. These are youth ambassadors who are bringing mental health counseling resources. Yeah, please stand up and take credit. So that's a big reason that we, and I appreciate your raising that, because the work that gets done here is the kind of work that we need all across the state.